Hey, this is Trent with Rip It Racket Stringing. Today I'm going to be stringing the Prince 03 racket, which as you can see has these very large, what they call O-rings. And the traditional challenge of stringing this racket is the need to put a manual brake on the stringing machine in order to hold the racket in the proper place to be able to pull tension across the strings without the strings being all distorted over the face of the racket. So today I'm going to be using the Wilson Baiardo stringing machine, and this stringing machine has a manual lever down here at the base of the turntable, which with my hand pressure holds the turntable just fine. And what we're going to see is whether or not it can hold the pressure of a 62-pound pull with an additional 5% pre-stretch setting as I string this racket with synthetic gut. I have read on the forums and seen videos that a lot of times guys have needed to hold the racket with their hip or with their hand while the tension is being pulled, and I want to test and see if my Baiardo can hold the racket when it's pulling across the face of the racket in these O-rings without any additional help from my hand or my hip. So tune in and watch how it works. Right, I'm going to be stringing this Prince 03 racket. It's an oversized head. It has these open grommets, which are something of a pain typically for stringers. And I'm going to be stringing it on the Wilson Baiardo today and testing the strength of the brake. Typically I string my 03 rackets on my Technofiber Ergo 1. Typically I string the Prince 03 rackets on the Technofiber Ergo 1, which hold up quite well. This racket has some serious issues in terms of grommets. I don't recommend someone playing with this racket, but for the purposes of this test today, I'm going to go ahead and string it because my main aim is just to be able to test the ability of the brake to hold when I get to the crosses. Okay, we're coming to the first O-ring here. I'm going to engage the manual brake. It is locked, and we'll change that angle just a little bit. All right, at 60 pounds at a very steep angle, it's holding. I'm pleased with that. I could feel the pressure on the brake, but it held just like it's supposed to, so we'll see if it continues to hold at the different angles of the pulls as we go. Now that's 62 pounds with an additional 5% pre-stretch on the initial pull. So pretty significant weight pulling here. It started to budge a little bit, but it held. Gotta be careful on these O-rings not to hit the wrong hole. Thankfully, it's a pretty quick fix. Early on in my stringing, these O-rings used to be the bane of my existence. I was just so annoyed every time I'd get one, but in the course of time, and particularly once I got a machine that could, where the brake held, namely the Ergo 1, the O-ring became less of a hassle. Still more of a hassle than a typical racket. There's the extra step of engaging the brake on all these crosses, but when I was still using my, when I only had my Babolat Star 5, where the brake is quite poor. It's actually probably the worst aspect of that machine. And then the O-rings were a tremendous hassle because I was trying to use various body parts to keep the brake engaged, keep the racket from moving, and really was not a good situation. While I don't like the Ergo 1 nearly as much as the Star 5, with regard to the manual brake, it is undoubtedly superior on that Ergo 1. But I'm very pleased with how the Baiardo is holding the turntable despite the significant poundage of pressure. From what I understand, if you have a Baiardo that's not holding, it may be that you just need to replace the friction brake. And there are instructions on how to do that on Wilson's website. I haven't done it myself. At some point, if I do, I'll probably make a video about it. But I hope I don't need to, because I hope my friction brake will hold. I don't know how others do this. Whenever I'm pulling the tension on the O-rings, I like to always have the angle. I like to have it right up against that part of the O-ring where it's ultimately going to sit. So that's how I adjust the turning of the racket to try to get as straight a pull across there as I can. Minimize the amount of adjustment that will need to be made later. My fingers and the strings are sticky from those rubber pieces at the throat that were falling apart. Basically melted, as best I can tell. If you've not strung one of these Prince O-rings before, you have to be careful. There is a long side and a short side, and if you get it backwards, the holes aren't going to line up correctly. So make sure you recognize where that proper starting place is. Okay, moving back into the traditional grommets. One more pull on the O-ring. Sorry, this is the final pull on the O-ring. Want to make sure I don't pull across that arm. Got that a little closer than I wanted. But, you know, you want to be careful not to put undue pressure on the string. Needs a little bit of straightening, but due to the brake holding and the ability to put the racket at the proper angles as I was going through and stringing those crosses, it's really in pretty good shape. So there we go. That's the Prince 03 Silver on the Wilson Baiardo. Really pleased with how the brake performed, and not super pleased with the condition of this racket, but the stringing machine did the job, and I'm glad to see it.